everyone, and welcome to the Graceologie with Gwen Smith podcast. I'm Gwen Smith, and I am so glad you've joined me today. Around here, we have fun, faith-focused, grace-filled conversations, all to help you know and trust God more. Our discussions are honest, often humorous, and always practical. And they're going to encourage you in meaningful ways to live out and lean on the grace of Jesus in the midst of cluttered, messy days. You got any of those? I know I do, and I can't wait to get to today's conversation, which is all about living and flourishing as an introvert. Today, my guest is Jamie Martin, an introverted mama of 3 who tells me she loves books, tea, and people, but not necessarily in that order. She avoids answering the phone whenever possible, and she's the author of several books, including her latest, Introverted Mom. Now, don't be confused, guys, because today's conversation is not just for the introverted half of our Graceologie community, and it's not just for moms. It's actually for every single one of us. Now, I'm serious. This discussion with Jamie actually gave me a whole new understanding and appreciation for introverts, and it honestly helps me as an extrovert to be able to relate to my introverted family and friends. So no matter where you land on the personality spectrum, what Jamie shares is true. Your personality is not an accident or a mistake. It's something to honor and celebrate. You already have every trait you need to be the best unique woman for your unique wife. It's just all part of God's design. Today's episode is filled with encouragement, practical tips, and action steps that are going to help my introverted listeners see your natural personality as a strength, not a weakness. And the rest of us will gain a better understanding of how to love and connect with our introverted loved ones. Hey, Jamie. Welcome to the Graceologie Show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to chat with you, Gwen.
I'm excited to chat with you as well. And as you know, around here, one of the things we do is a fast, fun favorites round so that my Graceologie community and I can get to know you in a way that we would not know you if we just read your bio.
Okay, perfect. Let's do it.
Okay, here we go. Jamie, talk or text?
Oh, so much text. And every introvert will relate to that.
Exactly. Coffee or tea?
Tea, definitely.
Okay. What sports did you play growing up?
Ooh, I wasn't very sporty. I did play softball when I was maybe 11 or 12. I've not thought about that for decades for a church league. But really, I was a dancer and on a dance team in high school. So that was more my natural bent.
Okay, cool. What is your go-to beauty item?
Oh my gosh, beauty item. I have this wonderful Burt's Bees lipstick. I don't even think they call it lipstick. It's like a small, narrow tube it's more like a lip gloss. And the color that I love is called Fig. And that's been my favorite lipstick for years and years. It's so great. But that whole series is really fun. They have so many fun colors, and it's by the brand Burt's Bees.
Totally. I love them too. That's totally great. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So would you rather play hide and seek or Marco Polo?
Hide and seek.
What's your favorite?
I could hide with a book and stay hidden.
That's awesome. What's your favorite laundry detergent?
Oh, we use All, and it's the kind that's for sensitive skin so that, there's no perfumes or dyes or strong smells, and I like that. Very
good. Okay, Anne of Green Gables or Anne Hathaway?
Oh my gosh, Anne of Green Gables, definitely.
She's my favorite. I love her. Okay, have you ever had a hamster?
No, but a friend did that I used to play with, and I really did enjoy playing with her hamster.
We used to have one named Princess Leia.
Oh.
Okay, Jamie, do you prefer baking or cooking?
Is neither an option?
Absolutely.
I enjoy baking, but I actually enjoy cooking if I have the time and I'm not rushed, like get it done. But the beautiful thing about having teenagers, which I do now have 3 teenagers, is that I don't cook nearly as much as I used to, which is nice for me since that was never something that I just did as a passion.
There you go. You prefer eating out. You're like, where's that third option? Okay, what is your favorite vacation spot?
Oh, I would love to go to a cabin in the woods with like a stream. And as an introvert, maybe I could have like my husband and I would have one cabin and the children would be in another cabin. We could visit, but not have to spend every weekend together.
Okay, the irony of that, since I know you homeschool. Okay. What is the wildest thing you've ever done?
Oh, the wildest thing I've ever done. Well, I was a missionary on board a hospital ship that went to different ports. It's an organization called Mercy Ships, and
Yes.
it went to different ports and does free medical care. And I'm not medical myself, but I worked on board the ship, and it was actually through that connection because they work a lot in Africa, in West Africa. That's how we ended up adopting our son, Elijah, who is from Liberia, West Africa.
Okay, that's wild. And that's awesome. And I've actually heard about Mercy Ship. That's so cool.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, Jamie, how good are you at roller skating?
Oh, 0. I actually have this story of I wanted to be good at roller skating, and I took lessons when I was young.
Wait, you took roller skating lessons?
Well, it was kind of like you could go to the rink in our town and you could free skate, right?
Yeah.
But at a certain time on a Saturday, they also did lessons. And I can remember going to those a few times. And once, the reason I remember it is because it's a traumatic memory. The leader or whoever, it was probably a teenage girl who was the instructor, right? And she was helping me do something and I fell and I made her fall too. And I remember like the look of complete frustration on her face. And that was when I was like, I'm never roller skating again.
Oh, you poor thing. Oh, I'm sorry to bring that up. Okay. Your final question for the Fast Fun Favorites round is, what fictional character would be the most fascinating to meet in real life?
Oh, I love that question. Oh, my goodness. It's interesting that you say that because my book that we're going to talk about today, Introverted Mom, I actually created the structure around these 4 introverted authors who are some of my favorites: Louisa May Alcott, Ellen Montgomery, Jane Austen, and Laura Ingalls Wilder, who were all introverts too. So some of their characters feel like already some of my dearest friends anyway. So I would have to say, oh my gosh, this is so tricky. It's not very fast. I know. I would have to pick Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. I would love to meet Jane. That has always been one of my favorite books. Jane Eyre is also an introvert and a highly sensitive person, but she finds herself in this crazy situation. She has to navigate it. She has to make really hard decisions, and she most of the time makes the right ones. And I just find her character really strong. And she was one of the first glimpses to me in literature of a really strong introvert that made me start to feel like, oh my goodness, made me begin to see the strengths of being an introvert for myself as a young mom.
Yeah.
So I would love to have a chat with Jane.
That's so great. Yeah, one of the Jane Austen characters I love is Emma, because I'm always trying to hook people up. Kennedy, my daughter, she laughs. She's like, Mom, you always feel like you can figure out who should go with who. I'm like, I know. So Kennedy watched Emma recently, and she's like, Mom, you are so Emma.
Yes, and that gets Emma into a lot of trouble.
I know. Well, that was fun. It was fun to hear your heart on that. Hey guys, I host a 5-part online Bible study called The Psalm Adventure. I've had tons of questions and conversations, and I've gotten so many emails and messages asking me how you can know what God says about forgiveness and healing, and fear and depression, and finances and relationships and hope. You want to know how to connect your personal struggles to the promises of God, and you want to know what His heart for you is. And that's exactly what we explore in our Psalm adventure, because we're going right to the source of all grace and all truth. We're going to the Bible. So I invite you to join me for my next Psalm adventure. Each week we seek God's heart together and grow as a Graceologie community. Even if you've never done a Bible study before in your life, I promise you the Psalm adventure is doable and will really help connect your needs to God's provision and your questions to God's answers. So join me and allow the Lord to restore your strength and your peace, heart, mind, and soul. Learn more about the study and register today by visiting gwensmith.net/psalmadventure. That's gwensmith.net/psalmadventure. You kind of started to talk about your family, and I would love for you to just tell us a little bit more about you. I know you're in the Northeast. Give me some scoop on Jamie Martin.
Sure. I have 3 children. They are currently 15, 14, and 14 when we're recording this. And the reason that they're so close in age is because my oldest and youngest we adopted internationally at the ages of my daughter when she was 4, our son from Liberia that I mentioned when he was 6 months old, and my daughter we adopted from India. Then our middle child is our biological son, Jonathan. And so we've hit every childhood phase full on. So we go, full on into preschoolers, full on elementary. Now we're full on teenagers, which is just so different, but really, really beautiful in its own way. My husband's name is Steve. He's from England, and he is the CEO of a charity called Love 146, which works toward the abolition of child trafficking. That's the reason that we live in Connecticut, which is where their headquarters are. And that's what brought us up here over a decade ago to the Northeast where we live. And I love the 4 seasons, not so much the snow, but now it's spring. And so everything is right in the world again.
Yes.
Yes, I've written a few books, and I started homeschooling unexpectedly. A lot of the reason for that was because our daughter was coming home from India at the age of 4, and we just really felt led to keep her at home around family for bonding. And then God used that to kind of lead to the next year and the next year. And I've written a blog called Simple Homeschool about that as well.
That's fascinating. I love that you have this multicultural international family. And so as much as we're going to head into that new book, I want to unpack your heart on that introverted mom. And really, I know that's speaking to half of my audience because that's half of it. Right. So I would love to hear, though, what's the personalities of your family? Because we know you're introverted. We've established that.
Yes. That's a great question. So we have 3 introverts and 2 extroverts, my husband and my daughter Trishna, my son Jonathan. Those are our 3 extroverts. And so then it's myself and my son Elijah from Liberia. We are the 2 introverts in the family, which is actually really special. I write about that in the book, just like here, God, we don't look alike, but we don't come from the same place, but we have this connection that really is a God-designed thing. And that has been so special for both of us to feel that way. And if we're talking about the other day, one of my sons was talking about whether you have earlobes. You know how some people have really distinct earlobes and then other people don't.
Yeah.
And he was learning about that in biology, like what's the reason for that. And we figured out, because he was doing a little poll in the family, we figured out that it was only myself and my son Elijah that don't have earlobes. So Elijah's conclusion from that was like, introverts don't have earlobes.
That's
which
hilarious.
I thought was funny. So they're very used to chats about about introversion, extroversion, and personality, since that's one of my passions. We talk about that a lot around here, just because it's helped us so much to understand each other and what we all need.
Yeah. Well, hearing you say that, I'm grabbing my earlobes, and I actually do have earlobes, and I'm extroverted. So I'm like, you tell him his thesis he might be onto something.
Maybe.
Now, so growing up, are you one of many children, a single child? Like how did you fit in on that scale of things? Because I'm wondering, obviously our personalities are really God-given, but when did you first find out that you were introverted, and what was your coming up like?
I am the youngest of 3 daughters, so all girls in my family, and I have 2 older sisters, and myself and my dad were both introverts. And I don't think it's not like I thought about that as a kid. I just knew that I gravitated towards certain things, books and quiet, and that I didn't enjoy people or certain activities. But afterwards, I knew that I just needed some time alone before jumping back into the fray. So I think I took my first personality test around the age of 14 in high school. And that's when I saw that it told me you are an introvert as part of the results.
Was that the Myers-Briggs?
Yes.
What are you?
I'm an INFJ, which is sometimes called the counselor or the advocate, and supposedly the rarest of the 16 Myers-Briggs types, about 1%. So that explains why I've always felt so different inside.
Well, since you and I are in a mastermind Christian authors sisterhood thing together, you probably know that I'm an ENFP. So there's so many, half of our group seems to be ENFPs. So
yes, I've noticed that. And interestingly, I was talking with someone the other day, and they told me that ENFPs and INFJs have this like natural connection because of the N and the Fs, but the other letters, they help to, round us out, and we gravitate toward that person. So you'll often find INFJs either married to ENFPs or just friends with ENFPs, which is so funny since that in our group, that does seem to be the case.
I know. I think that is super cool. What are you on the Enneagram personality
I'm
test?
an Enneagram 4 with a 3 wing. How about you?
I'm an 8 with a 7. I'm an 8 with a very, very strong 7. They're almost identical.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. That's like almost the opposite of the 4.
Exactly. But we knew that off the bat.
Yeah, that's right.
So you write this new book, and it's called Introverted Mom. It's an encouragement to those of you who are introverts. Honestly, the things that Jamie has learned and shares are across the board, whether you're a mom or not, because we're all impacting others and connecting with others. But I love the promise of your subtitle, which is really that there's a way to have more calm, less guilt, and quiet joy. It's like, yes, please. We want all of those, whether we're introverted or extroverted. But what are some of the unique challenges of being an introverted woman, especially when you become a mom?
I think the huge challenge that probably all introverts have recognized at some point in their lives, whether they really understood it from that perspective or not, is just the 24/7 nature of motherhood. So that's why I feel like I hear from a lot of other moms that maybe they knew, like me, that they were an introvert before they became a mom, but they were really able to manage getting the recharging time that they needed. So you have a busy, crazy day. Maybe you just chill in the afternoon, evening after work, or you sleep in the next day. So suddenly in motherhood, those might not be options anymore. And so you can find yourself in this place of being chronically depleted, which is then going to turn into frustration, into guilt, and maybe even anger, rage, especially if you don't understand the why. So I feel like it's really a self-awareness issue that when we understand why certain things frustrate us, we can begin to set up a plan how to handle that. And then we experience freedom by accepting this is the way that God designed us. There's nothing wrong with us. This isn't a mistake or an accident. It's not less than, even though we live in a highly extroverted society that seems to value that more. When we recognize that our personality is a gift from God, uniquely designed to bring into our families and the world the beauty and the contribution that only we can give. So I feel like when we recognize that, we can set up a plan ahead of time to handle challenges that might come our way. And then we'll just begin to come into our own and come alive in a new way, which leads to a freedom that we might never have experienced before.
Today's episode of the Graceologie with Gwen Smith podcast is sponsored by FabFitFun. Guys, I'm so excited to let you know that the 2019 FabFitFun Fall Box is now on sale. Use coupon code Graceologie to receive $10 off your first box at fabfitfun.com. FabFitFun is a women's lifestyle subscription box with full-size beauty, fitness, fashion, and lifestyle products sent straight to your doorstep each season. And you get to customize some of the items in your box according to your own personal style and interests. It retails for $49.99, but always has a value of over $200. And when you use code Graceologie, your first box is only $39. My fall box is off the chain, you guys. I'm so excited about it. I got a ceramic flat iron by Amika that normally retails for $80, a really stylish slim striped wallet from Cut From The Cloth, and a full-size jar of Cosmetics Pure C to brighten my skin, all in my fall box. These boxes do sell out fast, guys, so sign up for yours today. Head over to fabfitfun.com and use coupon code Graceologie for $10 off your first box. When have you seen this in your life when you felt that you were feeling that chronically depleted? Like, can you share a story with us of what that used to look like and how you've through a plan or how God has showed you that there's a way you can recharge and renew?
Yes, I have so many stories. One that comes to mind is there was a time my husband travels a lot with his work. And when we're recording this, he's in Manila in the Philippines. So
wow.
Yeah, this has been just an ongoing aspect of our lives, having these times where he's gone for a week or maybe 10 days or a day here and there if it's a shorter trip. So there was one time that he was away. He had been gone for several days at this point. The kids were younger, maybe like 10, 9, and 8. So not super little, but not super old like they are now as teens. And at the end of the day, I was so exhausted. I can't remember the specifics, but it was just one day too many, right?
Got it. Totally.
One day too many of him being away.
Yeah.
And my son was just about to go upstairs, my son Jonathan, to get into bed. But for some reason, the other kids were upstairs. He was still down with me on the couch. And I was doing my best to hold it together. I'm nearing the finish line, right? Bedtime. Right. Bedtime has arrived.
Yeah.
I'm just clinging to that grace and that promise of the reward of quiet that's coming. And he looked at me and he said, "Mommy, sometimes do you not want to be with me? Because sometimes I feel like you don't want me with you." And my heart fell into my stomach. I just felt sick immediately with all the guilt, all the shoulds, all the what's wrong with me, all the right. And so I chatted with him very quickly. He was only 9, so I talked about in 9-year-old terms about the difference between introverts and extroverts. And then he's like, "Okay, good night." And he scampers up to bed. Meanwhile, I go upstairs to toss and turn and wrestle with the thoughts and the negativity that was spinning around in my head, telling me that I am not enough, that my nature is not enough. And that term has been such a lie from the enemy that I feel like has been present a lot in my life, but maybe even more, much more as a mom and then as an introverted mom. And so that night was a real, I don't know about wake up call, but it was a real awakening to, okay, God, if I'm really who you want me to be, and if you really created me this way on purpose, then it can't be possible that I'm not enough, right? Because you don't make not enough. You only make beauty. And in the middle of the night, that night, I had this story come back to me that I had heard from a good friend who is also a writer mama. Her name is Lisa Grace Byrne, and she gave an analogy one time that really, really resonated with me. She talked about life having different seasons, and she talked about how in certain seasons of life, it's like we're crossing a meadow. And the meadow is flat and it's beautiful and the sun's out and you're just making progress one step at a time. And so you continue going, but then you reach the edge of the meadow and you find that there's a rock wall ahead of you. And the only way to continue making progress is to begin to climb the rock wall. Turning around is an option. There's no other detour. Well, the progress that we're going to make in our lives when we're scaling walls looks nothing like the progress, quote unquote, that we make when we're crossing through open fields. And that was such a beautiful reminder to me of the fact that when in hard seasons of life, it's not that we're not making progress. We are, but it's going to look nothing like those other seasons. So when daddy gets deployed, or when a scary diagnosis comes back from the doctor, or when your husband's been away for 5 days and you're just doing the best you can, it is still your best, but it might not be enough, right?
Yeah.
And I go on to share how it was really with a life coach's help that I found a mantra of sorts that I could use when that not enough lie tried to come into my head again and again. And she sent me on the hunt for a verse that I could kind of turn into a phrase that would come to my defense in those moments. Yeah. And I landed on Paul's cry in 2 Corinthians when he's talking about he has, this thorn in the flesh and he's begged God to please take it away. Then God finally says, my grace is made perfect in your weakness. And I had read that verse. I mean, we've all read that verse hundreds of times probably, but I just saw it in a new way, because what Paul was really saying, then he goes on to say, I will boast in my weaknesses so that I will have Christ's power. And so I saw in a new way, wow, what he's saying here is it's actually better to have weaknesses, because then we're not trying to be enough on our own. We can't, right? But when we have our weaknesses, that's when God's power can come through. And so I turned that into an equation, you could call it, that has been my mantra ever since, which is God's grace plus my weakness equals enough.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And that has just taken the pressure off and enabled me to see that I'm not trying to be anything other than what I already am. And perfection is not what we're after as moms, as women. We know that, and yet we can still get tripped up by that again and again. And I really want to take that burden off the shoulders of the moms who read my book.
Yeah. Well, I love that I'm on the opposite personality spectrum from you, and yet that mantra could be true for me too. It is true for me too. God's grace plus my weakness is enough. Oh man, I think that's going to speak a word to every single one of us who are, listening to this conversation. I know if you happen to be in the Graceologie community and you're driving and you're like, oh, that's so good. Or you're just not able to have a pen and paper and don't worry, you can get all of these these wonderful admonitions, these things that are useful to you at the show notes. So swing by gwensmith.net/Graceologie and find my episode with Jamie Martin, and we will have show notes that kind of give you the full summary and all the links that we're talking about to Jamie's new book. I'm going to put a link to Love 146. I definitely want to bring some attention to that nonprofit your husband works for. And but God's grace plus my weakness equals enough. That is a mantra we can all just wrap our hearts around and take comfort with. I love that one of your goals with your book is just you want to have more calm. And I think our hearts can be tied in a million knots when our children don't see us the way we want them to see us, and when we feel like we've fallen on our face again or not connected well. And so this is a real struggle for every single one of us. So we talked a little bit in our Fast Fun Favorites round about what fictional character you would love to meet in person. But so you do write about these 4 authors, these female authors. So, we talked about your favorite Jane Eyre. Now, which of the authors is your favorite?
Ooh, that's like asking which is your favorite kid, Gwen.
Sorry.
I don't know if I can pick a favorite of the 4, but I can say that maybe there's one that I feel a little more connected with than the other 3. And that would be Lucy Maud Montgomery, author of Anne of Green Gables, which came up in that round too. Yes, and I think based on all the research I've done about her, that she was likely an INFJ as well. And that would explain why I feel kind of a kindred spirit connection with her.
A bosom friend.
Yes.
Why she would be your bosom friend, as they would say.
I like to think that all these authors, and I share that in the introduction, that they would all love me. But
of course they would, Jamie.
They're all dead. I can't exactly test that theory. But interestingly enough, Maud, that's what she was called by her friends and family, in her journals, which she journaled prolifically. She was actually very opinionated about people she liked and people she didn't like. So she didn't hesitate to put it all out there if there was someone that did not connect with her.
Which actually might have played into the character of Anne, because Anne was certainly very opinionated about people.
That's true. Yes. And I feel like Maud had a really, really challenging life in a lot of ways, and a lot of hardship and tragedy that defined her path in many, many ways. And what I love is how God really redeemed that in her work. And she even comments at one time in her journals that when she was finding out after Anne had been out for maybe a few months, she writes something like, they say that Anne is a big success, and that one of the reviews said the book radiates optimism and sunshine. And she goes on to say, when I think about the time in my life and the shadows that I wrote it in, I'm astonished to hear that from someone. But she said, I'm so glad I can keep the shadows out of my work because I don't want to bring down any other life.
Wow.
Yeah. So she was really my role model in terms of how introverts handle loss and heartache, which is one of the chapters in my book, because so much of that came her way. And because she journaled so much, we have an inside scoop into how she handled it, both the positive ways and the negative ways. And that gives other introverted moms, a takeaway that we can learn from her experience. So I feel a lot of gratitude towards Maud for her work that has gone on and on, her beautiful characters, but also from her life.
That's awesome. And I'm a huge Anne of Green Gables fan, so I love this conversation. Let me swing back around to your mantra, because I'm really in love with it. But with God's grace plus my weakness equals enough. But our weakness comes along, when we table that, it comes with a whole bunch of mess. And I know that one of the things you mentioned before that conversation with your son was mama guilt. So the guilt, unpack that guilt for me as an introvert, because I'm sure it comes from different places than an extrovert?
I think the guilt as an introvert and specifically as a mom probably comes from watching other moms who are likely extroverts and seeing what they are doing and the things that they love and the things that they shine at, and then feeling like, why can't I do that? Trying some of those things, because that's usually how we learn about ourselves, is through this trial and error process as moms. So maybe trying out the large play groups and the other things, and then coming away completely drained and depleted and thinking, what on earth just happened? And so I think that's where a lot of the guilt comes from, seeing other people and assuming that they're like us and noticing what they excel at, and then feeling like, why don't I excel at that? My kids are going to suffer. Or coming up with, we have so many stories that can fill our minds in those unhealthy times, guilt-ridden times. And it's interesting because I was talking with an extroverted friend, and she was saying, because I was mentioning to her that when I see some of the things she's doing on Instagram or something, it makes me feel like, oh, that's so cool. I wish I could do that. And she was saying that when she sees photos from introverted moms of like candles and books with our kids, that she feels the same thing in the other way, that she doesn't necessarily feel gifted at creating like that peace at home, and that's not something that naturally comes to her. And so I thought that was just really beautiful to hear that we all struggle with that, and we both have gifts. And so it's when we really narrow in on what our contribution is to make and what our family needs, which is what God has already equipped us to provide. That's when we can shake off the guilt, or even because, it's going to come back, isn't it? It's not like we figure
it's not a one-time thing.
This out. Yeah. But just the knowledge makes it that much easier the next time to say, oh, wait, I remember I've been through this before. No. God's not calling me to be that person. God's calling me to be me with my faults and my hangups and because that's how we learn about forgiveness. That's how we teach our kids about forgiveness. Moms are not exempt from needing forgiveness or asking for forgiveness or receiving forgiveness and grace. Right. Grace for moms too.
So what is the grace angle when it comes to this? Because we're going to keep failing. So what does that look like for an introverted mom? In your example earlier, you simply shared with your 9-year-old on a 9-year-old level. Let me explain to you about an introvert. But what are some other ways that grace can manifest itself and be the hand that picks you up in those moments of just wiping out?
I think that grace comes in when we realize that everything is not ours to do. And we see that in Scripture again and again, right? You could say that God called Mary to produce the Savior, but that wasn't it. It was grace, right?
Yes.
All she had to do was be there. And you could say that the little boy with his basket of fish and his loaves, that it was his job to produce the 5,000 person feast, but that was not it. His only job was to hold out his very small offering in whatever it was that he had to give in that moment. And that's what is going to breathe life into introverted moms when it seems like on the surface, maybe what we have is not enough, or maybe in that moment, our limitations feel like limitations. But with God, there are no limitations because He specializes in the impossible. And all He asks from us is to give our daily imperfect offering again and again and again. That's it. And that's something we can all do no matter what the day is like. And that's something that when we fail, He knows that we'll fail, but it's not about our success. It's about our continued faithfulness, and that's all.
Yes, I love what you just said. With God, there are no limitations because he specializes in the impossible. I love the picture that you just painted with that. It reminds me of a story that was told to me by one of my lifetime mentors. His name is Dave Clark. He's an amazing songwriter, but he's just a lover of beauty and story, and just he can craft a lyric like nothing. But he told a story once that has always stayed with me. And it was about our talents. It was about these gifts that you're talking about, or these failures, regardless. He was once, when his son, Sam, was just little, Dave's passion is baseball. And Dave was playing, they had gotten a little wiffle ball and bat for the family, and it was they decided to play wiffle ball inside. So Sam was just little, and so they made, like a magazine was home plate, and maybe the chair was first base, and second base was the lamp, and couch on the other side, third base, and
Okay.
so he's got it all set up, and his daughters are playing the outfield, right? So Sam's real small, and so Dave is pitching to him, and Sam is swinging with all his might and just not connecting at all. But it occurs to him when he started to see Sam get discouraged, Dave thought, oh my goodness, I can pitch this to hit his bat. And so with that next pitch, Dave tried specifically to hit Sam's bat. And Sam made contact, and he dropped that bat and ran around those bases like he owned that home run. And he made it the whole way around. And it was a huge, happy moment of celebration where he was elated. The whole family was having a blast with it. But Dave knew it wasn't that Sam hit a home run. It was that the pitcher hit the bat with the ball. And I'm just slain by that. At any time we have anything of value, any accomplishment, anything that we've joined God in, it is not that we have hit a home run out of the park. It is that the pitcher, in all of his grace and his goodness, he threw the ball at our bat.
That's so good. I love that. And I'm going to get back to that.
Yeah. I mean, it's just so encouraging, and it's just so humbling because, even in the Word of God, I love that conversation Jesus has with his disciples before he went to the cross. I mean, John 15, where he's like, with me, it's sticking with me, abiding with me. If you stay in me, you can do anything. Apart from me, nothing. And that's really the grace that we're talking about. Whether we're introverted or not, but we all need it so daily. And so God's grace plus our weakness is enough. I love that. So
Amen.
Yeah. So you talk in your book about the difference between self-care and self-improvement. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yes, goes back to a realization I had when I recognize that as an introvert, what we truly need is time alone on a regular basis, quiet time alone, to process what's gone on in our lives, to care for ourselves, to regain the energy we need to come back to our families as the best women and moms that we can be. But I noticed that sometimes when I would have time alone, I would not be using that for self-care, but I would fall into this habit that I came to call self-improvement, where let's say that I finally get time alone, but some issue that's been going on at home is still in the back of my mind, as it often is for us. And so it would also make me feel, sometimes we have this fake productivity feeling. It's like that feeling where you're checking email or you really don't want to do anything, but you open your email because it makes you feel like you're doing something.
Exactly. All the time.
Yes. So it's a bit like that when it comes to self-care. I would, instead of really replenishing myself, really giving myself what I most deeply needed so that I could continue to handle the situations that were in my path at that time in my life, I would try to hack it. right? Come out. I mean, our society loves these productivity hacks, happiness hacks. And I would try to hack whatever situation was going on in my limited time away. So that might look like going on Amazon to search for some kind of magical cure book that was going to tell me, have a new child by that book, have a new kid by Friday. And, I'm not knocking that book specifically, but it's just that title. The title it naturally leads itself into this temptation where we want something like that and we want a quick fix and we want to figure it out, solve it, get it off our plate. But what I found is that when I would use my golden hour and I would come back from that completely drained still, even though maybe I had been alone, but I had been trying to arm wrestle my way through whatever life was presenting me with at the time. And it was in one specific case that I just finally reached the end of my reserves of doing that. And I put my computer away, my work away. I grabbed my jacket. I went out for a walk. I think I came back and I took a nap. And I even managed to watch an episode of a British drama. And it took maybe, I don't know, I had maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours. And afterwards, I felt like, oh my gosh, my life is not horrible like I had thought it was. There's a million beautiful things. And I think I just needed like a nap and a little brain rest and distraction and to trust God with my mess instead of trying to hack and figure as if it all depends on me. Yeah. So that became known as self-care compared to self-improvement. The object of self-care is not selfish, which we can feel like maybe it is in certain instances. It's not about that. It's really about caring deeply for ourselves in genuine ways so that we can then return to care for others in the ways that they most need.
So let's get real practical for listeners who are introverted and introverted moms. What does that look like? What can that look like? What are some ideas you have? What can we do today to help them differentiate that golden hour between self-care and self-improvement? What are some practical things?
That's a great question, and definitely really we need those specifics. So I actually have a list in my book of maybe 75 or 80 practical self-care things that listeners can choose from. And I organize them all in time increments so that let's say you only have 15 minutes or less. It's got a big long list for you then, because I feel like sometimes decision fatigue, especially if we're exhausted and drained and depleted already, we can feel like, oh my gosh, what's 15 minutes? I can't possibly do anything that would make a difference. And so that list is super practical depending on how much time you have. For me, a couple of the ones that I have really found helpful. One thing I do is I have a Chimes app on my phone. It's called Westminster Chimes, and it goes off every hour. It sounds like Big Ben or a grandfather clock. And that is a signal for me to kind of come back to my presence, come back to the present moment, to bring God into whatever I'm doing in that moment, because I can tend to be lost in my head or thinking about the next thing, which moms so easily do. And so I love that signal on a regular basis of just, oh, okay, what am I doing right now? Oh, I'm washing the dishes. So let me just wash the dishes. Let me think about the fact that it's so amazing that we have clean water, yes, hot water, right? So it's a signal for me for that, to recognize what God is doing in this moment and to not just rush by it, not to just rush my life away, because God always delivers life to us in one moment at a time. And so that's been a really practical thing for me that's helped. Another thing that I mentioned in the book is creating a happiness checklist. And that comes from research that has been done about happiness and how people become happier. And interestingly, scientists have found that people who are obsessed with feeling happy all the time actually find themselves less happy. So they rank themselves less happy than others.
Huh.
And scientists have found that it's actually something they call prioritizing positivity is a way to naturally increase the happiness in your life. So instead of analyzing your emotions or expecting to be happy all the time, when people get fixated there, they get stuck. And then we find that nothing can meet our expectations because very little in life is perfect. So we can find ourselves constantly noticing what's less than in the moment. And that obviously doesn't lend itself well to happiness. But when we prioritize positivity, and what that means according to these scientists and researchers is bringing in small moments of joy. So those things that are unique to you, what brings you joy. For me, it might be reading to my kids, things that you do by yourself and with others. And so I created a list on my phone, just in my notes folder. And so it has like check boxes beside it. It's always there. And so when I'm going about my day, whether it's a good day or not a good day, there are always these maybe 10 to 15 things that are there that I can go, oh yeah, these are going to help me travel that road toward positivity, toward happiness. And happiness varies so much for people because of our unique circumstances and all of that. But interestingly, researchers have found that there are 4 things that do produce happiness cross-culturally and for every person. And so those things which can go on anyone's happiness checklist are sleep. Hallelujah.
Yay.
Exercise.
Yeah.
The third one is social connection, so being with others. And then the last one is achievement or growth, so working towards something, learning something new, and that can be tweaked, according to your natural bent and interest. So I think when you're thinking about how to practically bring in quiet joy, those are really good places to start, and not necessarily easy places to start. Just saying to a mom like, oh, just get more sleep. And she's like, yeah, Jamie. Sure,
I'm nursing every other hour. Exactly. Yeah.
Right on that. But I think that when we recognize what is and isn't within our control, so we can't control how many times the baby is up in the night, but we can control what we choose to do when the baby goes down for what might only be a 20 to 30 minute nap.
Yeah.
And it's recognizing those things that are within our control, and also just the awareness of, okay, I'm not getting enough sleep right now. And so I might find myself naturally frustrated with what's going on, because that's hard, and it's not natural to navigate that. Just, oh, yay, I'm a Christian mom, I'm going to be so joyful, and I have not slept in 3 years. It needs to just be real, right? But at least we can understand, so that helps to take the guilt away too. Of course, okay, this is just a difficult time, but look at all these other things I can do to take care of myself so that I can continue doing what God's calling me to do.
Yes, I love the happiness checklist. That is practical. That's universal. No matter where we fall on the personality scale, that could really help boost and revitalize each of us in our days. I love that. That's so practical. I love the 4 things that produce happiness, because all of those are vital: sleep, exercise, social connection, and achievement or growth. And even as you were talking about, like that young mom who only has that 20-minute, 30-minute time of the kids actually going down or having quiet time. I was thinking, when I was a young mom, in 20 minutes, I could paint my nails. I could do something that would check that achievement box, or So there are so many things that we could do to just create that environment of, okay, here's something that can be useful to me. I love that you have the notes in your phone too. I do notes on my phone as well. And that is so helpful, because we always have our phone, my word.
Right. Yes.
But
it's great because you can, like in the morning, since the happiness checklist, more or less stays the same. The things that get checked off every day might be different. But in the morning, you can like highlight the whole thing with one click. I can take all the check boxes away, and then with another click, put them all back. And so you're ready to go for a new day. So it's very easy to not like having to write something out every day and to-do list.
Definitely. I love this. This is so great. As we finish this conversation, would you, with all of these things in mind, would you just pray over my Graceology listeners, especially for those who are just like you, those introverted mamas who this might just be stirring their hearts in a special way today?
Yes, I would love to do that. God, I just lift up every woman who is listening to these words right now. Each woman listening is your precious daughter, chosen and designed by you. You look at her and you see beauty. You don't see her shortcomings. You see your grace painted all over her, just enveloping her on every side, above, below, to the right, to the left, before her and behind her. And she is beautiful in your eyes. And I pray for women like me who might have the lies of the enemy trying to tell them in whatever situation that they are not enough. And we claim the blood of Jesus over us, saying that is not true. We rest on your grace that says that your grace with our weakness does equal enough, Lord. I pray introverted moms everywhere would just rise to what you've put in them, Lord, to recognize that their contemplative and reflective natures, their natural desire for quality and depth over quantity, that all of those things are beautiful in your eyes and are gifts directly from you, gifts that you want them to use to touch their family and others, and that will reach the whole world. And as our planet and our fast-paced society, God, spins wilder and wilder every passing year, Lord, I believe that one of the ways you use us as introverts is to ground people and to help us remember to go slowly so that we don't let our lives just pass us by, Lord, but we see you in every moment. Would you bless every woman listening and go with them in their day? In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen. The book is Introverted Mom, your guide to more calm, less guilt, and quiet joy. My guest has been Jamie C. Martin. Jamie, thank you so much for being with me today.
This has been just a complete joy, Gwen. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Don't you just love Jamie? Be sure to visit her online and connect with her on social media. Today's show was edited by Britt Barlow, and the music is by PremiumBeat.com. If you'd like to invite me to speak at your next women's event, or if you have questions, comments, or topic suggestions, send me a message right from my website. I love hearing from you. You can find me at gwensmith.net. All the links and show notes from today's episode can be found at gwensmith.net/Graceologie. That's gwensmith.net/Graceologie. Thanks for joining me today. I'll be back soon with another episode, but until then, if you haven't already subscribed, head on over to your podcast app and click the subscribe button. Subscriptions and reviews really make a big impact for those of us who are working hard to bring you these shows. And be sure to connect with me on social media. I'm at Gwen Smith Music on every platform. And the show is at Graceologie with an IE on every platform. Now get out there and have a beautiful, grace-filled day.